A small raccoon burrowed into the beauty skin suit on the bed. The suit instantly filled up, its limbs swelled, and a girl took shape in an instant. The latest action horror blockbuster, Hellboy, is now online, taking you into an astonishing fantasy world. In 1959, a train sped by. The Hellboy from the Bureau of Supernatural Research and Defense was chatting with a rookie agent named Joe. In the train car, Hellboy closed the door and sat on a wooden crate. When an agent asked, "What's in the box?" After getting permission from the Baron, Joe told him, "It's a funnel web spider. It might be the deadliest spider in the world, and the most suitable host for demons." As Joe was explaining, Hellboy heard a strange noise. Then, a tentacle pierced through the crate, and the funnel web spider darted out. The male agent immediately drew his gun and fired, but in the next second, his head was pierced through. The Baron pushed Joe aside and charged at the spider. As they struggled, the car shook violently. Joe nearly got thrown out, while Hellboy steadied himself and fought back. Soon, the entire train car derailed. The giant spider swept through the trees, and both Hellboy and Joe fell out. Hellboy got up to survey his surroundings, and the funnel web spider attempted to ambush him. Fortunately, Hellboy was quick enough to react. He shook off the spider and grabbed a thick branch to fight back. After taking a few hits, the funnel web spider started to shrink back to its normal size, but unexpectedly, this guy was still tricky even after shrinking. It slipped away from Hellboy's grasp. It burrowed into the ventilation tunnel. Who would be building tunnels in the forest? Joe looked around, and he speculated. This place was in the coal mining country of Appalachia. The two had lost the cargo they were supposed to transport, and they felt quite anxious. There had to be something in these mountains that affected the funnel web spider, causing it to become so frenzied. They needed to find a phone to contact headquarters. They discovered a wooden cabin at the foot of the mountain. Although Hellboy had a peculiar appearance, he had been in the newspapers, and he was quite famous. Everyone knew the Baron worked for the United Nations. Joe kindly asked the homeowner, "Do you have a phone?" The homeowner replied, "Of course, I have one. Why wouldn't I? It's right behind my Mercedes-Benz. Look at this rundown place. Does it look like I have any electronic devices here?" However, the homeowner still invited the two inside to rest. In the center of the living room lay a child, wearing only an undershirt. The homeowner said, "Since the day he found him, the boy has been like this. He was covered in cold sweat, and he was completely motionless." Hellboy asked, "Why haven't you taken him to see a doctor?" The homeowner explained, "Because doctors would be of no help to him. This child has been cursed by someone. It turned out that there is a witch named Cora Fisher in this area. The unruly children have been throwing stones at her house. She must have cursed this boy." Just as those words left his mouth, Tom from the town walked in. He had heard what the homeowner just said, and he handed something to Hellboy. "This is what I found at the door," Tom said. Hellboy recognized it as a witch's ball. Tom seemed to have some knowledge of witchcraft. He advised the homeowner, "Boil the child's clothes in boiling water, and then call out Cora Fisher a few times. If it really is her magic, this will break the curse." Joe handed Tom a business card. She intended to investigate the witch in town, so she hoped Tom could provide assistance. Hellboy pulled Joe aside, telling her to return to headquarters as soon as possible. Joe should be in the lab or library, not running around the scene, putting herself in danger. But Joe was reluctant to return to headquarters empty-handed. As for Tom, with nothing to do, he agreed to help the two. Meanwhile, an old witch was explaining to her pet crow the steps to make a witch's ball, using weasel blood as the base, with the addition of a rat's tail, the innards and bladder of a black cat, and finally, a vulture's egg and baby fingernails, and a little bit of bat brain. After boiling these ingredients in a pot, the small ball made of hair will transform into a powerful witch's ball. As for why the old witch was explaining this to the crow, it could be that as people age, they tend to talk to themselves and converse with their pets. Meanwhile, Tom led the Baron and Joe to the front of Witch Cora's cottage. He called out a few times at the door, but there was no response. Tom stepped forward and pushed the door open, and the inside was empty. The Baron recognized him well. He asked Tom what his relationship with Cora was. Tom explained that they had a romance when they were young, believing they would be together forever. Tom didn't want to elaborate further, and he opened a side door nearby, where many crow corpses were hanging upside down. He climbed a wooden ladder down into the basement, and saw a whole bag of witches' balls. Meanwhile, Joe went upstairs to check the situation, and her calls quickly echoed down to the basement. The Baron and Tom ran over to see, and found a human skin lying on the bed in the upstairs bedroom, complete with the head and body intact. Tom was not surprised by this, and said Cora must have gone out for a stroll. "We can only wait here for her to return," he said. Tom mentioned, about 15 years ago, he was traveling about a mile from here. He encountered the witch by the creek. Influenced by her, he became twisted in character, and he began to study various dark magics. He wanted to possess the power to dominate others. So Tom procured a dead black cat to cook. Then he took the bone remnants to the creek to wash, and followed the witch's method to summon a demon, and the entity was the legendary bending man, Ansem. It is said that Ansem came here from Europe hundreds of years ago, and even participated in the interstate wars, making a fortune in the process. Unfortunately, Mr. Ansem died a terrible death. He had committed many evils in his lifetime. He could not go to heaven, so he had to work for the demons of hell, collecting human souls for them, facing true evil. This made Tom suddenly aware. He threw away the lucky bone, used to summon the bending man, and fled, but that bone reappeared again. Tom could never escape from it. In the end, that lucky bone saved his life during the war. Tom also realized that this bone contained powerful energy, but he had never used it to harm anyone. At this moment, a small animal jumped through the back window into the bedroom. It burrowed into the human skin suit. In the next second, the shriveled skin suit slowly filled up, and the joints began to crack. The witch twisted and turned. Joe hurriedly pulled the Baron downstairs, while Tom rushed over to embrace Cora, and led her to the fireplace to warm up. The old lovers had not seen each other for many years. Cora told Tom, "After you left, I married Nate, but he died soon after. Our child also died." Cora was so emotional that she spoke incoherently.
They out there, Tom, they want my soul and they go have it.
Not while I'm here. Not while I'm here.
Just as her words fell, the door suddenly opened. Cora screamed in fright. "She's right outside." The Baron went outside, with an oil lamp to check, and a shadow of a horse rider appeared in the woods. Her snow-white dress was stained with blood. This person was the witch Effie, who had seduced Tom back then. She looked just like she did 15 years ago, and by her appearance alone, it was hard to judge a witch's age, unless you cut off their legs to count the rings. Seeing Cora trembling all over, it was clear that she had been tormented by Effie recently. Effie slid down from her white horse, and stood in front of the lamp. Her appearance was like that of a young girl. Effie didn't regard Hellboy at all. She had come this time to help her master, and deliver a great gift to Tom. Effie leaned against her white horse, and then she soared into the air, disappearing into the night sky. In the next moment, the white horse collapsed on the ground. Tom then realized the white horse had actually transformed from his father. The old man reverted to his true form, in his son's arms, but unfortunately, he was already a spent force, and soon took his last breath. Tom had been away from home for many years after joining the army. He had no idea how much his father had suffered. He vowed to make the bending man pay the price. Tom prepared to bury his father first. At this moment, a small insect suddenly flew onto Cora's leg. After it stung her, she fainted instantly. The Baron crushed the small fly. Late at night, the three rested at Cora's home. The Baron kept watch by Joe's bedside, but his consciousness gradually became hazy. In a daze, he heard the cawing of crows. This seemed to be an ominous sign. The next day, Tom carried his father's body to the church. On the way, Joe couldn't help but ask Cora, what gives the spell its power? Turning simple words into something formidable? There are only two ways. First, sell your soul to the devil. Second, truly touch your heart, and use your own strength to evoke magic. This sounds simple, but it's difficult to do. The four of them walked halfway, when they saw a mine tunnel. In a mining country like Appalachia, tunnels are like veins lying dormant beneath the skin. As they were lost in thought, Cora suddenly opened her mouth wide. In the next moment, she evaporated from the woods. Tom quickly looked around for her, while the Baron saw a white shadow flash by. Then, he found Cora suspended in midair. A black snake emerged from her skirt, slithering into Cora's wide-open mouth, and finally sliding out from her lower body. The snake formed a complete loop, creating a perfect deadlock. Suddenly, the large snake raised its head and bit Cora. The woman struggled desperately. The Baron grabbed the snake by its neck. He was bitten by the vile creature, and a battle ensued between man and snake. Cora also lunged at the Baron to interfere. He threw it off. BBT, the black snake attacked from behind again. It was caught by the Baron, and its head exploded under his grip. However, the Baron also fainted from the snake's venom. When he woke up again, he found he was in a strange place. In the distance, Cora was walking towards the church. The Baron immediately chased after her, following closely behind.
What the hell is this place? I think you know. It's your mama, ain't he?
It turned out that the Baron's mother Sarah was also a witch, though he had never seen her before. The Baron knew that the woman in front was his mother. Cora murmured to herself, "She is paying for all her sins, suffering torment day and night." In the next moment, Cora uttered a chilling incantation. "He is here." A gigantic crow flew behind Sarah. Demons often take many forms, and the crow is a relatively common vessel. Sarah addressed the great bird as her master, and begged it to kill her. End this torment.
Can you not feel the new life growing inside of you?
It can't be possible.
The demon said, and it spewed a burst of flame. Sarah suffered in the blaze, and the monster in her womb was none other than Hellboy. In the next moment, Joe woke the Baron, and the previous vision vanished away. Meanwhile, Tom, guided by the lucky bone, found Cora buried in the ground, but before he could dig her out, Cora vanished without a trace. In the end, only Tom, the Baron, and Joe remained. As they brought the body to a nearby church, a blind priest was kneeling in the center of the church, and he recognized Tom by his voice. Tom expressed his surprise. "How did you know it was me?" The priest replied, "Before you arrived, a girl told me about you. She sat right here. Can't you see her?" Tom guessed that the girl was Cora, in her ghostly form. The demon might have destroyed her body, but it couldn't take away her soul. As the priest prayed for the deceased, Joe noticed that several locals were approaching the church. He didn't know what they intended to do. Meanwhile, Tom was determined to find the bending man and sacrifice his soul. It was he who awakened this demon. Now it was time for him to end everything himself. Hellboy was ready to go with Tom. He believed that there was still room for maneuver. The priest did not stop them, but he suggested that the three should rest for the night and wait to act until the sun rose. Because the demon's power was strongest in the dark, the Baron thought that it was still early and was about to refuse. But just as he spoke, the sun set at an unbelievable speed. This was certainly not normal, and the crowd outside showed strange expressions, as if waiting for the main characters to exit the church. The priest stated that most of the townspeople had their souls taken by the bending man. They were essentially puppets of the demons. The three could only rest in the church for the night. Joe tried to invoke the witch's spell. Thinking of what Cora had said during the day, she focused on the saddest things, in hopes of stirring her own heart. To her surprise, the glasses on the table actually shook. At this moment, Tom's father suddenly moved. Could it be that he was rising from the dead? Tom leaned over to listen to his father's chest, only to sense that Effie was nearby.
I know you can hear me from there.
All your friends in that church with you, they all gonna die.
Tom stared at the side door. His face was filled with terror. By the time Joe and the others reacted, Tom had already disappeared without a trace. At this moment, he had reached outside the church. The puppets, under control, seemed to sense something, and suddenly became restless. Then, the answer was revealed. It was the true form of the bending man that appeared.
Little Tom Farrell, come back to see me. Bring me my lucky bone.
Tom stated, "I can give you the bone, but you must promise not to harm the people in the church." Tom was about to hand over the bone, when Hellboy appeared just in time to stop him. He urged the priest to take Tom back to the church first, leaving himself to confront the bending man. Unexpectedly, this guy tried to deceive the Baron as well. "Didn't you see your mother burned before your eyes? I have the power to lessen her pain, for just a small favor in return." The bending man urged the Baron to twist off Tom's head, but the Baron was not swayed by the temptation. He drew his pistol and fired, but countless flying insects swarmed in, a cacophony of noises, all drilled into the Baron's ears. The bending man seized the opportunity, and grabbed 6 steel needles, and stabbed them at Hellboy. Joe hurriedly helped the Baron back into the church. As the Baron pulled the needles out of his body, Joe helped him extract the last one. At the same time, the bending man's sinister voice echoed, constantly disturbing the priest's sanity, trying to persuade him to sell his soul. The bending man even healed the priest's blindness, giving him a taste of what he desired. The priest knelt on the ground, refusing to relent, saying he wanted nothing, and did not wish to trade with the devil. The old witch who had spoken to the crow earlier saw a tombstone through the fence, and disdainfully asked, "How can a sinner like Abby, who poisoned 2 husbands, be buried in the churchyard?" The bending man found this amusing, and touched the ground, intending to awaken Abby. In the next moment, the coffin burst forth from the mound, and crashed into the church. The woman named Abby crawled out of the coffin.
You always did like them pretty girls, didn't you, Reverend? I could feel your eyes on me giving them.
The priest had secretly harbored feelings for Abby, which is why he buried her body in the churchyard after her death. The Baron grabbed the woman's head and smashed it into the ground, not giving her a chance to continue her nonsense. But this land harbored too many guilty souls, and the Bending Man quickly awakened. The promiscuous gamblers and thieves, countless sinners crawled out of their graves, and they rushed towards the church. The Baron naturally shot one after another. In the end, Tom's father also rose to cause trouble. Joe stopped the Baron from firing his gun. Just then, a large group of zombies attacked. The Baron shot each one without mercy, while Tom kicked his father away and grabbed a shovel to knock him out. Meanwhile, the priest crouched on the ground and shouted, "Lord, I want no gifts from the devil. Please take away my sight." Unexpectedly, the Lord's efficiency was quite impressive. Just as he finished shouting, he went blind again. The Baron was still battling the zombies. They kept coming in waves. Tom took out the lucky bone. Tom was grabbed by the priest, and the two combined their strength, causing the bone to emit a brilliant glow. They then carved a cross onto the shovel. The priest handed the blessed shovel to the Baron. The Baron wielded the shovel, sweeping through the crowd, and it proved to be quite effective. He swung the shovel at the Bending Man, creating blinding sparks in the night sky. When he woke up, it was already the next morning. The severely injured Bending Man had transformed into a crow and fled. The Baron instructed Joe to go down and contact headquarters, and not to return to this dangerous place. He himself set off with Tom, preparing to find the hiding place of the Bending Man. However, Joe did not set off immediately. She carefully reviewed the events of the previous night. She discovered that the Bending Man could draw energy from the ground. Tom had mentioned that these hills were like living beings, and the old mines acted as its circulatory system, running underground like veins. Joe speculated that if they could destroy the power source and sever the connections between the mines, they might be able to harm the Bending Man. The priest thought this was quite convenient, as the church was built right above a mine. The two descended into the mine together via the ladder. The cross on the shovel emitted a bright light, indicating that something was approaching. In the next moment, a large flock of crows flew in. The priest swung the shovel wildly, but there were just too many crows. They pierced through him like bullets, slicing through the priest's body. Meanwhile, the Baron and Tom entered an abandoned building. The second floor was cluttered with various items, and from the nearby hallway came the sound of a baby crying. The Baron took a deep breath and pushed the door open, only to find that this was the dining area. The crying came from a plate in the room. When he opened it, he found it was filled with maggots. At this moment, Tom suddenly vanished. The Baron was about to exit to look for him, when a wave of sinister wind swept through. When the strange wind passed, the Baron fell into a dark, otherworldly space. His mother Sarah was being consumed by flames. Soon after, the fire vanished, and the Baron was drawn to his mother. This woman had never cared for him, and he didn't feel that. This reunion was a warm scene. He instinctively wanted to save her, but his mother said, "The witch's fate should be this way. She only asks for her son to kill her." Meanwhile, Tom was also searching for the Baron, but unexpectedly, the witch Effie suddenly appeared. Tom hurriedly took out the lucky bone to confront her. Effie screamed as the light stabbed her. She jumped out the window to escape. In the mine, Joe unexpectedly encountered the funnel web spider. In a critical moment, she remembered the witch's spell and the pain of losing her family in childhood. Joe successfully unleashed the power of the spell, defeating the giant spider in the darkness. She pushed the small insect into a jar and sealed it. At the same time, the Baron listened to his mother's screams and finally made up his mind to raise his gun, but he aimed the gun at himself. In a moment of crisis, the illusion vanished. The Baron instinctively grabbed the person in front of him, only to realize it was Tom.
You all right, big fella?
Yeah. Some kind of booby trap. Something broke it.
It seemed that Joe's spell had likely saved the Baron as well. They continued to pursue the crow, and they spotted the Bending Man on the lower level. The Baron immediately raised his gun and fired. Tom heard the sounds of fighting through the wall, but in the next moment, the Baron burst through the wall. It was clear that he had been thrown by the Bending Man. The Baron was about to be sent to hell by the demon. Tom grabbed the witch's ball and threw it into the Bending Man's mouth. The Bending Man choked and began to cough violently. The Baron seized the opportunity to throw him downstairs. He shot the Bending Man's head off, and a large pile of copper coins fell from him. These were the souls taken by the Bending Man. The two prepared to leave. On the way, the Baron told Tom, "I think that lucky bone of yours is just a cat bone. Ultimately, the true power comes from your own heart." After Joe destroyed the mountain tunnel, the witch Effie aged rapidly and was no longer a threat. In the end, the two main characters gathered, holding the spider. They prepared to report back to headquarters. The film concludes here. As another reboot of the series, this film presents a story intertwining horror and fantasy. It begins with a confrontation with a giant spider demon. The thrilling action scenes follow one after another, but unfortunately, the later plot development became increasingly sluggish. The newly introduced agent characters were also too one-dimensional, although the director attempted to innovate while remaining true to the comics. From the perspective of plot and character tension, it did not reach a satisfactory level.